wide world of musical chords can be an overwhelming place. In part 1 of this series, I offered 5 tips for diving right in and learning some chords. Perhaps you're interested in making an arrangement of a song you love, and you want to put your own stamp on it, making it your own. Perhaps you're interested in writing your own songs. These goals require a little knowledge of how chords are constructed, and today we'll attempt to demystify how chords are built. Step 1. Understand the difference between a note and a chord. You can have notes without chords, but you can't have chords without notes. So, what are notes? When you pluck any string, it vibrates at a particular frequency. The frequency depends on what material the string is made out of, its thickness and length, as well as the tension that is on the string. The more taut a string is, the higher the pitch. For example, when I pluck the first string of my ukulele, if I've tuned, I should hear what is commonly called a concert A, with a vibration frequency that cycles 440 times per second. This pitch is often called A440 and is said to have a frequency of 440 hertz, hertz being the short way to say cycles per second. You can call this pitch an A note, but for the purpose of discussing chords, notes are not limited to a single pitch, but include a group of mathematically related frequencies that are organized as pitch classes. On a piano, the A note pitch class series includes tones at 27.5 hertz, 55 hertz, 110 hertz, 220 hertz, 440 hertz, 880 hertz, 1760 hertz, and 3520 hertz. Each time you go up an octave, you'll notice that the number doubles until we get into dog hearing range and beyond. All of these notes are A notes because our brains process these octaves as being the same. If I play 2, 3, or 4 octaves together or in succession, it doesn't feel like I've gone anywhere. And there's no perception of harmony here. The same is true for all pitch class sets. A B is a B is a B, and a C is a C is a C, and so on. It is only when we start to play different pitch classes together that we begin to perceive the harmony of music. Step number 2, don't confuse harmonies with chords. All chords contain harmonies, but not all harmonies are chords. Technically, a harmony is 2 or more notes sounding at the same time, while a chord is 3 or more notes played simultaneously. The reason harmonies are not considered chords is that 2 notes played together at the same time can imply a number of different possible chords, depending on the context that you find them in. For instance, C and E notes sounded together could imply a C chord or an A minor chord, giving the situation depending on what comes before and what comes after. Those 2 chords both contain C and E. Step number 3. Remember that chords have a very simple definition. Chords are collections of 3 or more notes that are played at the same time. When you think about chords that way, it's a simple thing. Play any 3 different notes and technically you've got a chord. I think that remembering this can free a person to experiment with various different chord combinations of notes. Just play around a bit and find some combinations that appeal to you. If you want to know the name of a chord that you've found, try using an ukulele, guitar, or piano chord namer. There are links in the description. Step number 4. Get to know the major scale. In order to really understand chords, you have to understand a little bit about scales, or at least understand the most common kind of scale, the major scale. A major scale is built with a series of half-step and whole-step intervals. On fretted instruments, each fret raises the pitch of a string a half step. To make a whole step, you just need to go up 2 frets instead of 1, because 2 halves make a whole. I'll demonstrate this using the C string on an ukulele for example. But just remember that any major scale, no matter what notes you start on, follows the same pattern. From your root note, in this case the C note, you step up a whole step, and then a whole step, then half step, then a whole step, then a whole step, then a whole step, and then a half step. This takes you all the way back to where you started from, only you are an octave higher. And right there. Okay, you can get the same scale by playing just the white notes on a keyboard. Because the scale is not symmetrical, this is going to affect the qualities of chords we build from it later on. So step 5 becomes understanding the chord qualities of triads. Triads are basic 3-note chords that include a root note, a third, and a fifth. For example, a C chord's root is C. Stacked above it are E and G, the third and the fifth of the C major scale. It's important to note that whenever someone talks about a C chord or any other note name chord without more information attached to it, they're talking about a major chord, the baseline default chord. So when they say C chord, they really mean C major chord. If you limit yourself to the 7 notes of a single major scale, there are 7 possible triads you can build. However, because of the asymmetrical nature of the major scale, these triads are not all going to have the same quality, which basically means they won't sound the same. The standard triads in the key of C include C, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, and B diminished. So 7 chords for a 7-note scale, producing 3 different chord qualities: major, minor, and diminished. So what makes a minor chord sound different than a major chord? Let's compare the C chord we talked about before to the D minor chord we just mentioned. With the C chord, the distance between C and E is 2 whole steps, aka a major third, and the distance between E to G is a whole step plus a half step, aka a minor third. Given this, we can create a formula: a major third plus a major third equals a major chord. Building a triad on the D note gives us a different result though. D to F is a minor third, and F to A is a major third. This combination produces a different formula: a minor third plus a major third equals a minor chord. To derive the formula for diminished chords, a B to a D is a minor third, and a D to F is a minor third. So a minor third plus a minor third equals a diminished chord. All major, minor, and diminished chords can be built using these same formulae. Step 6. Accept the near infinity of chord possibilities. Well, fortunately, if you're feeling adventurous, or unfortunately, if you want to keep things simple, it just doesn't end there. Take, for instance, that last chord I mentioned, the B diminished. It's rarely used as a triad, but it's often incorporated into larger 4-note chords, most often the perennial favorite G7, which contains all the notes of a B diminished chord, but places them over a G note. As G is the 5th degree of the C major scale, this chord is also known as a 5/7 or dominant chord because of its pushy tendency to want to move you back to the 1 chord, or C in this case. This forces us to start talking about 7th chords, 4-note chords that are also based on stacks of major and minor thirds. For the key of C, the native 7th chords would include a C major 7, a D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, the aforementioned G7, A minor 7, and the rarely seen outside of classical music B diminished 7, which is that one. Okay, so we've got 14 chords for the key of C. But it just doesn't end there. Once you've added all the 9th, 11th, 13th chords, you have 35 chords to deal with. Multiply that by 12 possible keys, 1 for each note of the chromatic scale, and you'll have 420 chords, many of which will overlap between keys though, bringing that number down significantly. However, once you start thinking about chords that add extra notes that are not based on thirds, add in all the possible chords with altered notes in the form of accidentals, calculate all the possible inversions of those chords, add in the possibility of alternate tunings made possible by just intonation. as well as considering billions of possible chord voicings. You can quickly see that mastering the language of chords is about as hopeless as trying to distill and drink the ocean. A single lifetime would hardly be enough to choose between skimming across the surface or deep diving in one small cove or harbor. Step 7. Relax. I think understanding the impossible immensity of the task of so-called chord mastery is kind of freeing. One cannot ever hope to be a master of music, and though I confess to hold a paper that says I am such a master from an accredited music school, the phrase is completely oxymoronic, at least for mere mortals. Where does that leave us? Free to set sail on that immense ocean, free to explore the infinite waters and see what strange or familiar shores our journeys will lead us to, free to cast our nets out in hopes of gathering in a few of those magic fish that will feed our souls for a lifetime. I know I said in the title of this video that I was going to demystify chords, and yet I seem to be closing with a bit of chord mysticism of my own. That said, the way we generally think about chords in Western music is pretty straightforward. Stacks of major and minor thirds in different combinations, occasionally throwing in a few added notes or accidentals. Music theorists will tell you that this chord should lead to this chord, or that this chord has no place next to that chord. Honestly, I think that's all a big waste of time. There are better ways to explore than to look at maps of where people have already gone. Alternatively, exploring our past heritage of music is a worthwhile endeavor, as long as we allow ourselves the luxury of investigating music that we love or think is worthy of our attention. All right. If you've enjoyed these steps, tips, whatever you want to call them, and find them helpful, please remember to let me know with a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and ring the bell to get notifications when additional tips and tutorials are uploaded, including more videos on exploring that ocean of chords. Lastly, don't forget to share your thoughts on chord mysteries or chord demystification. You never know who might be helped by hearing your thoughts and about your experiences.